Good morning, everybody. I welcome you all once again for software testing class. That is session 12. So unit number 1, session 12. So in the last class, we discussed about when to stop testing, criteria for complete testing, or what is the criteria. If you go on doing testing, there should be some criteria to stop testing that. So maybe time may be constrained, or money may be constrained, or your deadline target may be constrained. There should be some concern. When you go on debugging, what you can call, you continuously will be finding out the bugs. So at what particular time, how many times you need to do debugging and so on. That. So there are some criteria for completion of testing, what you call, when we should stop testing. That is when at a particular, some factors are there. What is that? So there are 3 criteria used in practice for completion of testing. There are 3 steps or three criteria, 3 factors are there. Like for example, when you run out of time, for example, first of June is your target, and still you are not able to complete it. Already, you need to deliver the software by 1st June. So now, even there are bugs are there, or they mean minimum bugs, you need to stop that. So that is the first criteria. When you run out of time, so deadline is there on the 1st of June, you need to deliver the software. So now we need to stop testing that. You cannot keep on doing the testing. Still bugs may be there, but you try to minimize the minimum number of bugs and you need to deliver. Yes, the next criteria is when you run out of money. Yes, so you're going on doing testing continuously, and what's happening there? You're doing testing continuously. So if it is doing more amount of time, it will cost more there. So then when you run out of money, that is the second criteria. Then the third criteria for stop testing is based on statistical criteria. Statistical, like based on the facts. Like for last similar project, you want to execute last project. The last project, there may be, for example, minimum like there were 10 bucks, for example, or you would have done it for 1 month. So in 1 month, your project was very successful. So based on that, so for this project also, you can what you can call do testing for 1 month, and then you can identify that you need to stop the testing. What you can call. That is all. So these are the 3 criteria that are used for practicing or to identify that you do, based on these criteria, you need to stop or completion of testing, what you can call that. So first factor is when you run out of time, when you run out of money, and based on the statistical criteria. So based on these factors, you can say that our testing is completed, what you can call it is fine. Next, a more practical approach for declaring that testing is complete is to use third criteria. What is the third? First criteria was, the first criteria was run out of time. Second criteria is run out of money. The third criteria is statistical criteria, that is based on the facts, previous experience, what you call. Yes. So last time for the last project, you had taken 1 month and your project was successful. So based on that, that is the best criteria, what you can call that. A more practical approach for declaring that the testing is complete is to use the third criterion. That is what based on the statistical facts. After the coding is completed and testing begins, initially many defects may be detected. So initially when you do start the testing initially at the beginning, so you may get more number of defects. As you go ahead and ahead, the number of defects gets reducing it, minimizing it. Slowly, the number of defects found in a given time keeps on reducing. So initially you had got 100 defects, for example. Later, as you go on debugging and as the developers removes those defects, it may come down. Yes, the graph showing the number of defects found every week would be shown. So this week you might have found 100 bugs. Next week, how many you might have found out, and so on. That if the number of defects found per week remains less than a predefined threshold consecutively for 3 weeks, then the software can be considered a mature product and released to the client. So for example, if the 3 weeks you test, first week there are 100, second week it has come down, and next 2 to 3 weeks, if their defects are less or more or less same, what you can call that. Yes, it is consistent. Like there are only 10 bugs. You're done for 3 weeks testing. After 3 weeks of testing, the bugs are only 10 there. Now you can say that yes, it is sufficient that you can declare that software is free of bugs or minimum number of bugs. Then you can say that your software is ready, and then you can release it to the customer or a client. So if the number of defects found per week remains less than a particular value, suppose 10 is the value you are having for last 3 weeks, the number of defects what you found is 10. That means that is the minimum number of defects you are able to find. After below that, it's not possible. Then you can declare that your software is ready and you can deliver it to the customer. Yes, fine. Somebody read these points.
more practical approach for declaring that the testing is completed is used to the third criterion. After the code is completed and the testing begins, initially many defects are detected. Slowly, the numbers of detectors found in a given time keeps on reducing. The graph shows the number of defects found every week would be shown. If the number of defects found per week remains less than a predefined threshold consecutively for the for 3 weeks for 3 weeks, then the software can be considered a mature product and released to the client.
It's fine. So these are the things what you need to do. So if the number of defects are what you can call same for more than 2 to 3 weeks, then you can say that the software is ready or minimum number of bugs, then you can deliver to the client what you call. Yes, fine. Yes, that's next. Yes, that is what criteria for completion of that. Next is defect seeding. What do you mean by defect seeding? You can call. Yes, we'll see defect. We'll discuss this. So once again, we'll discuss in defect seeding. Intentionally, some defects are introduced in the code, and testing team is asked to detect the defects. Suppose 100 defects are intentionally introduced in the code, and the testing team is able to detect 90 defects. Then we can say that only the 10% of the defects are undetected out the intentionally introduced defects. So it is likely that 10% of the actual defects are not detected by the testing team. So this is what we call defect seeding. That what is defect seeding? So intentionally we introduce bugs in the particular program and ask the test engineers to detect the defects. So for example, so 100 defects were introduced in the software. Now the test engineers were able to identify only 90 defects. That means still there are 10% of the defects that were undetected. So this we call that as a defect seeding. Intentionally introducing the what you can call defects in the program, we call that as a defect seeding. That is fine. Yes. Next is risk-based testing. What do you mean by risk-based testing? Risk can be defined as probability of occurrence of a problem in future. Occurrence of it may cause a damage. So we need to take risk there. So every time we need to do, so 50-50 what you can call risk. Always there is a risk when you are traveling, when you're going out. So there is no option. You need to take a risk. Risk can be defined as a probability of occurrence of a problem in a future. That the problem may occur in the future or it may not occur. That is what you call. So risk is defined as a probability. So probability of occurrence of a problem in future. Occurrence of the problem may cause a damage. Yes, that is what. So there were so many defects, but you removed it. But there is chance that these defects may occur once again. That is what you call probability. A risk for risk probability, what you call. Suppose you develop a test engine, suppose a test engineer commerce portal for online purchase of books. One example that if the portal is made up of without testing on the security aspect, then the probability of occurrence of security violations is very high, and hence the damage will also be very high. For example, if you developed a portal for books, online books you want to purchase, and if it is not tested properly, yes, and you're not taken care of security, what happens? Somebody may tamper your data or somebody may exploit your data and they may use it. So the probability of what you can call security violations are very high and the damage will also be very high. Yes, they may exploit it, your portal, and if you're not done proper testing, somebody, the transfer of money, the cost of the books may be purchased without paying the money. It happens sometimes. Or the amount is being deducted from your account without knowing it. How it is possible? Such things happen. That's what. So if the portal is made up without enough testing on the security aspect, you need to test for security. So if the security is not tested properly, then there is a chance that there is a very high risk of security and the damage will also be very high. So while testing the software, we need to reduce the risk. So the risk should be reduced as far as possible. So minimum risk. This outlook towards testing is called as risk-based testing. So you need to ensure that the risk is very, very less or minimum risk what we want that. So the loss should be minimum. We don't want the very high loss. That is what we call risk-based testing. Read these points.
Risk-based testing. Risk can be defined as probability of occurrence of a problem in future. Occurrence of problem may cause a damage. Suppose you develop the test engineer commerce portal for online purchase of books. If the portal is made up without enough testing on the security aspects, then the probability of the occurrence of security violation is very high and hence the damage will also be very high. While testing the software, we need to reduce the risk. This outlook towards testing is called risk-based testing.
So the main aim of risk-based testing is to have minimum risk on your software. That is what we call risk-based testing, what we call. Yes. Next, one more definition. We can define risk as follows. Risk is equal to probability of occurrence of problem, that is denoted by P, multiplied by damage that can be caused by the problem D. So risk is defined by P multiplied by D, where P is nothing but probability of occurrence. So probability will be, it will fraction value between 0 and 1, it will be that is, and multiplied by the damage that can be caused by the problem D. What you call. This is a definition of problem for calculating the risk, what you call. Yes. So there are two types of risk again, product risk and project risk. What are those? We're going to discuss. So there are two types of risk, product risk and project risk. What is that? The product risk are due to leaving the bugs in the software and delivering the software to the customer. So what is that? So the bugs are there in the program or the software, and without eliminating those bugs, you're delivering the software to the customer. That is what we call product risk, what we call. Yes, we call that as a product risk. So for example, what are those? Some product risk may be whether your software will work for different version. You are using Windows 7, for example, or whether it will work for XP or 8, 10, or and so on. Whether will this software interface with legacy database, whether your software will support the databases which are available in the market. That is what we call product risk. So you, for example, you are using PowerPoint to 2007, for example. So and you are having a 2003 Office, so you will not be opening your file. You are unable to find. 2003 files can be opened in 2007, but 2007 files cannot be opened in 2003 software, like that. So that is what you call product risk. So your software should be developed, what you call, it should be able to support any operating system or any version, or it should be compatible enough, or you should update the software and give it whatever it may be. So that is what we call product risk. Product risks are due to leaving the bugs in the software and delivering the software to the customer. So some product risk are, will the product work on different versions of Windows like XP, 8, 10, and so on? Will this software interface with legacy database? That is what we call product risk. Read these points.
The
product risks are due to leaving the bugs in the software and delivering the software to the customer. Some product risks are, will the product work on different versions of Windows, for example, Windows XP 8 and version 10? Will this software interface with the legacy database?
Whether the software will support the customary database, what is available in the market, what we call. Yes, fine. Next, what are the project risks? The project risks are due to the problems in executing a particular project. Sometimes you do the project for 5 months or 6 months, and at the end you may not be able to complete the project. You may not be able to complete the project. Yes. So failure to complete the project within the time or within the budget is called as a project risk. Suppose you have assumed that you want to complete the project in 6 months, and you are unable to complete. Yes, you are unable to complete in 6 months. That is what you call, you are able to, that's a failure of the project. You had assumed or you had allotted 6 months to complete the project, you are unable to complete, and you had allocated some budget, for example 10 lakhs. So but your expenditure is more than 10 lakhs. That is what you call project risk. So allocated time and allocated budget, you are unable to spend, or the what you call the expenditure is more and you've taken more time for the project than the allotted time. That is what we call project risk. If the project is not completed within the time frame, again there are two types of damages. What is that? Additional money has to be spent due to the extended time on manpower to complete the project. You had estimated that 6 months are required. Now you're unable to complete. So you'll take 8 months. Then actually 2 months extra salary you need to pay for the employees. Hence, definitely your expenditure will also be high, what you can call. It increases. That is what you call the project risk. Additional money has to be spent due to the extended time on manpower to complete the project. Then the customer may charge late delivery clause and cut some money from total project cost. So while you might have made some agreements that before starting the project, the customer might have told, the client might have told, I want the project at a particular date. If you do not deliver at a particular time, so you need to pay some, what you can call, some fine, something like, or he may cut some late charges, what you call, because he wanted to start up his business by first and you're not delivering it. So if you delay it by 2 months, the client or customer will also be under loss. So because of that, again, some percentage of your cost will also be deducted. The customer may charge late delivery clause and cut some money from the total project cost, because you are not delivering the project in time. So you again be losing the money from the customer also. Such damages are very costly and project risk need to be minimized. So this is very, very important. So project risk will increase. The two types of risks are there. What is that? What you can call the money will be, that is what budget risk, and time. If you're not complete within time, and if you don't complete with time, naturally cost will be increased. Again, you need to pay extra money for the your manpower or the software engineers, and again the customer will also cut some money as it is a late delivery time. So what is your aim? Your aim should be to minimize the project risk. So these are the two types of risk what we have discussed: product risk and the project risk. What is that project risk? Can somebody read this?
The project risk. The project risks are due to the problems in executing a project. Failure to complete the project within the time or within the budget is project risk. If the project is not completed within the time frame, there are two types of damage. Additional money has to be spent due to the extended time on manpower to complete the project. The customer may charge late delivery clause and cut some money from total project cost. Such damages are very costly and project risk need to be minimized.
So your aim should be minimize the project risk there, because in overall your money will be lost. From the customer point, he also will cut money and you need to pay extra for the manpower, what they are doing the extra time there. So that is what you call the project risk, what you call. Yes, fine. Then again, there are some other risks are there. Project risk are as follows: some shortage of skills of team members. So when you take up the project, you had got 10 members, but after 1 month or 2 months, some members may leave the job. That's another risk. Then there may be some politics in the organization. Some people may not support you, internal politics. Then lack of management support for testing quality assurance. You're not having team members to test the quality for your software. Then third party supply failure. So for example, as you told, testing can be done in-house or you can outsource. Suppose you are given somebody else for testing and they have not given the software what you can in time there. That also may be the reason. Third party supply failure. Then persons living in the middle of the project. Yes, some person may leave the job in between. Then accepting the project without studying the requirements well. So without proper analyzing, you're taken up your project. That also may be the reasons for the project risk, what you call. So just go through this.
Storage of skills of team members, politics, lack of management support for testing, third party supply failure, persons leaving in the middle of the project, accepting the project without studying the requirements well.
Yes. So these are again some of the project risks. Yes, fine. Next, risk-based testing involves the following steps. Again, what are the steps there? How to, what you can call, what are the steps for testing there? Yes, fine. Identify the various risks for the project, product risk and project risk. What is it? Identify the various risks for the project risk and product risk. Analyze the constraints. What are your restrictions or what do you call restrictions or constraints? What do you have? Based on the constraints, prioritize the tests to be carried out. So which tests are important? You prioritize, yes, which are the types of testing what you need to do there. Then identify the types of testing to be done. identify whether the usage of testing tools will be help in reducing the risk. To reduce the risk, what you can do? So first analyze, you may have some restrictions. Suppose for example, you have only 2 test engineers, for example. So which testing should be done first and give priority for that. Yes, prioritize that. Then what type of testing has to be done? Yes, identify that. Then whether the testing tools will be helpful for reducing the risk coding call. Yes, fine. This is how you can follow the steps. So to minimize the risk coding call. So first identify what are the risks, analyze the constraints, what restrictions you have. You just what do you call? Yes. Identify the various risks for the project.
Analyze the constraints. Based on the constraints priorities, the test to be carried out. Identify the type of testing to be done. Identify whether the use of testing tool will be of help in the reducing risk.
Yes. So risk-based testing involves the following steps. What you call? It's fine. Next. Yes. Then the last one is about the myths and realities of testing. What do you call? Yes. The myths and realities of testing. Testing is easy. Yes. So what do you remember that is many engineers think that testing is a very easy job and development is a more challenging job. But testing is equally challenging job and good skills is required for test engineers. What do you call it? Yes. So many feel so everyone want to become a software developer. Yes. So software developing is a very challenging job. What everybody feels. No, the testing is also a very challenging job and good skills are required for test engineers. Yes. So, but testing is equally challenging job and we require good skills for test engineers. Then they say test engineers have no career growth. So many test engineers think there is no career growth. If test engineers upgrade their skill, then there will be a career growth. So you know only few skills, for example, and if you do not upgrade yourself, then you don't have any growth you can. So definitely when you are a test engineer, you need to upgrade yourself also. That yes, fine. If test engineers upgrade their skill, then there will be career growth. What you call test engineers become better developers as they bring out quality software. What do you call yes, test engineers become better developers as they can bring out quality software. Test engineers can take up software quality assurance as their career option. So initially you may join it as a test engineer. Later, based on your experience, you can become a part of your software quality assurance team there, quality manager or test manager, and so on that. And even the test engineers can become better developers as they can bring out quality software because they know the skills of testing and all, so they can develop the software very well. What you call yes, go through these points.
Testing is easy. Many engineers think that testing is very easy job and development is more challenging job. But testing is equally challenging job and good skill is required for test engineer. Test engineers have no career growth. Many test engineers think that there is no career growth. If test engineers upgrade their skill, then there will be career growth. Test engineers become better developers as they can bring out quality software. Test engineers can take up software quality assurance as their career option.
Yes, fine. Next again. If I learn a testing tool, I will get a job. Now, for example, you may see, I want to become a test engineer. So we have not learned testing tools and all. So whether if I go for what you call some training centers are there and so on, many testing centers are there. If I learn a tool or if I go for a course, whether there is a chance that I may get a job or not. Yes, definitely what do you call test engineer should know how to use testing tools, but only the knowledge of testing tool is not enough. Test engineer should have a good understanding of the software quality assurance. You may say, I've gone to testing institute, I've learned so many tools. So that is not sufficient. Also, you should have some quality assurance information, understanding of software quality control, what we call. They should learn the testing process thoroughly, gain expertise in application domain, and gain experience by working on a few testing projects. How to improve it or how to get a job in testing is for you can learn some tools and work on some live projects. Yes, when you work on live projects, and gain experience on a particular domain, like web domain or testing or security and so on, or whichever domain you're working, then what you can call, then you can be more expert, what you can call. Yes, so definitely you may get a job there. Testing does not involve coding. Test engineers think that no coding is required for testing. To do advanced testing, number of test scripts has to be written. Writing test script is similar to writing code in any programming language. So you may think that you need not write, you need not any programming language. No, you need to know some of the programming language. So why? Because you need to write some small programs. We call that as a test scripts for in advanced testing. So even you need to write some programming. So you need to write the coding or programming languages required, what you call. Yes, go through this.
If I learn, okay, continue.
If I learn a testing tool, I will get a job. Test engineers should know how to use testing tools, but only the knowledge of testing tool is not enough. Test engineers should have a good understanding of the software quality assurance. They should learn the testing process thoroughly, gain expertise in application domain, and gain experience by working on a few testing projects. Testing does not involve coding. Test engineers think that no coding is required for testing. To do advanced testing, number of test script has to be written. Writing test script is similar to writing code in any programming language.
Yes, that is about the myths and realities of testing, what you call. Yes, some more myths we are going to discuss. Yes, what is that? Yes, fine. Testing is a phase that comes at the end of development life cycle. You've seen that. Testing must be started at very early stages. If a module is ready, it has to be tested without waiting for others to complete their modules and integrate them. Yes, what we do, usually the testing is at the last phase, usually in the software development life cycle. What we do, we wait till all the phases are complete, then we start testing. So you need not wait it. So there may be 10 modules. So you need not wait for all the 10 modules to complete. When one module is ready, you start testing it. So that will be very easier for you. Instead of waiting till all the modules are ready and then you do testing. So that will be at the end what happened, large number of workload at a short time. Instead of that, you start that testing at the earliest. When one module is ready, start doing it. So first is complete, then second has come, then start second, and so on. In this way, you may continue. Yes, fine. Testing is completed. Testing is never complete. If a testing engineer has not detected defect in the software, then it does not indicate that software is defect-free. Software may contain defects. What we say, so if the test engineer does not identify any defect, suppose he says that there are 0 defects. Yes, at this particular point, there may be 0 defects. But later when you install in the client environment and maybe after 6 months or maybe even after 1 year, you may recall the software may show some bugs. Quite possible. Test engineer is not able to detect the defect. So this so always we say testing is not completed. So we complete it just for the sake of we need to submit it at a particular point. We need to end. We have some minimum defects, so we stop it. Otherwise, we cannot continue. So testing, we say it is always over complete for you. It's fine. Continue. Read this. Go through, somebody.
Testing is a phase that comes at the end of developing life cycle. Testing must be started at very early stage. If a model is ready, it has to be tested without waiting for others to complete their models and integrate them. Testing is completed. Testing is never complete. If a test engineer has no detected defect in the software, then it does not indicate the software is defect-free. Software may conduct defect. Test engineers is not able to detect the defect.
Yes. So that is what the next again the myths and again some more points. So developers know that their software will have bugs. No software developer thinks that his code has any defect. If test engineer tells that software is not working properly, developers will not agree for that. This is because developers are emotionally attached to their work. So when we say that there are bugs in the software, the developers will not agree because they know that they have developed the software without any bugs. But only when the test engineer tells that there are bugs, so they will be very angry there. Yes, they say that there are no bugs, and you're telling there are bugs. So they are, because why? Because it is being developed by them. They are very emotionally attached to them. Then test engineers are the most disliked people in the organization. Why? Because so they identify your mistakes. It's not a mistake. Why they do? They identify the defects just to improve the quality of the software. Yes. So in most organizations, test engineers and quality assurance people are disliked. This is because developers do not like their mistakes being pointed by someone. So you have written the program and the test engineer is saying that you have done mistake. So when somebody else is pointing your mistake, you will not be very happy. Development group and testing group will always fight with each other. So that is a common tendency. Always a miscommunication or they call discussion or fighting, something between development and testing team. Test engineer should communicate effectively with the developers. They should point out a problem without hurting the person there. So without hurting somebody, politely they can tell that there are some bugs in the particular software. That is about your myths and realities of testing. Yes. So these are the things we have discussed in this chapter. And with this, we have completed your unit number 1. So which is we have discussed some introduction topics in the small first chapter, and the second chapter was fundamentals of testing. So today was the last topic, the myths and realities of testing. So if you have got any doubts in this chapter or in today's class, you can ask me there. Otherwise, we can wind up the session there. Any other things? Any doubts? No doubts?